Hey everyone, I'm Patrick Laughlin, COO of iProv, and I am joined today by our social media manager, Jake Wisnet. Jake, good to see you, man.
Good to see you, Pat. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You know, with Jordan on vacation, I'm filling the vlog with special guests, and I'm very, very excited about our special guest today, Shannon Nelson. Shannon is a business leader, and she's the marketing director for one of our favorite clients, Arkansas Family Dental. And I just want to preface this by saying, as business leaders, our job sometimes is to have really uncomfortable conversations. As someone who has had every single possible advantage in their life, this is probably going to be a little uncomfortable for me, and I just want to acknowledge that. But I'm super grateful for the opportunity to listen and to learn and to amplify Shannon's perspective. Particularly on how business leaders like me can use their privilege and their platform to make the world a little better. Shannon, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be part of the conversation. And just to kind of dive in, I think you kind of took a good first step in terms of even reaching out and getting perspective of employees. I think that's one thing that a lot of companies don't do for their employees of color or minorities is kind of realizing how it's impacting them, because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I realize I don't think there's a person of the opposite race that wants to remain ignorant and just simply don't know what to say or how to react. But I think it's hard for the person of color to work, especially in times like this when things are going on, racial injustices, and we be needing an outlet or a voice, and we don't want to also bring up that uncomfortable topic to our superiors in fear that we're going to start some kind of in-house controversy. So like for me in particular, I know when this all happened, I was already super passionate about the topic in general because, you know, I am a person of color, and in my position, I didn't want my opinion to kind of be overshadowed or come across as that's my company's opinion. But I think the main thing is starting first with the employees, because the employees are most often affected really deeply, and they feel the least heard, especially if their boss don't recognize it or say anything about it. They kind of feel like nobody cares. And I think at the root of it all is that's what this entire movement is about. From my perspective, when the George Floyd particular incident happened, I tried to explain this to my bosses is from a Black person's point of view, we don't see a man dying, we see ourselves. We see that knee on our head. We see our brothers, our dads, our nieces, our nephews. We see that could be us. And it's terrifying because we can't do nothing about it. We can't change our behaviors. We don't have an improvement plan. We don't have anything that we can actively do to stop it. And in a world today where it kind of feels like everyone is kind of against us, and it's like, can somebody help us? Can somebody just say, I have your back? You just kind of want to feel safe. You want to feel heard. And I think that's kind of what started the radical expression of the rioting. And I try to explain to some people, like, they're not rioting to purposely damage. They just want to make noise so people can say, you know, hear me, see me, I'm right here. It's not necessarily to tear up anything or destroy people's lives. It's just pent up anger and no outlet. Because if you can't do it at work, you're tired of talking amongst like your family and friends because they're experiencing it too, and you feel like the world don't care, you just kind of feel a little hopeless. And I think for the workplace, I think it's important for bosses, managers, CEOs to at least first address it, like bring awareness, like I know, like I can't empathize, but at least I'm aware. I think in this particular incident, it's also ironic that it happened right after COVID-19, or we're kind of still going through it. But it's kind of like when that hit and everyone was dying, it was front page news, everyone cared. It was like a form of unity. Everyone's wearing masks. And then when this happened just to one group of people, it's like half the people are talking about it, half people are ignoring it. So it's kind of like, where are these meetings of like safety and we care about you and we care if you get home safe? Because it was instances where I leave work and it's dark and I'm like, it's a different reality for me if I get pulled over that could be my last day on earth, versus to someone else get pulled over and they just leaving home from work during curfew, not even knowing they're getting off work. They don't have to worry about those things, but it's so many little tedious things that a person of color has to go through, that I think other people don't have to take into account or consider. And it could be very an interesting perspective, especially when you're like in a higher position of power, because you don't, like I said, want to stir up any controversy. You don't want to overstep. You don't want to equally offend anybody. Nobody wants to have the tough conversation, but it's also that fear, like, oh, what if they're on the bad side of the fence too? Now you then made yourself a target. It's so many different things that go through your mind. So it's almost like best to be quiet, but it's hard to be quiet when you're yearning to be heard. So I think having the uncomfortable conversations, I think every company should start there. Like, sit down first with the employees, let them know, like, hey, we don't know exactly what you're going through, but since you're going through it, we care, we're here. And if there's something we can do, let us know. We can support you in any way. Just some kind of support system, because I think of it like if, someone's family member died, people would do those steps. And I think it's kind of hard to gauge when, from a Black person's point of view, that was kind of like our family, like an extension. It's kind of like, man, like we're dropping left and right. And I know this movement, like the Black Lives Matter movement, been going on for a while. And I think people are kind of confused on even what that is. And it's just like, it's almost begging to stay alive, just to matter. And I was actually talking to Abby about this, is like, you have people out here in the streets begging, not for equality, not for civil rights, but just to matter, just to be relevant, just to breathe. And it's kind of sad that has to be demanded and not just given just because I'm a human and I'm like, hey, I'm working just as much as you. But I also think it's super important from a corporate standpoint for companies to know that saying nothing is saying something. Being silent doesn't make you neutral. From this perspective, it just means that you don't see nothing wrong. Because I'm like, if you saw someone get beat down the street and you walk by, then you didn't see nothing wrong with that to stop it. And so I think it's really important for companies to speak out and say, hey, I'm not with that. I don't think this is right. I think that speaks way more volumes than trying to stay neutral, because there's really not a neutral ground in this. I think there's literally just a right or wrong side. And you really, I feel like if you speak out, you really can't do wrong with it unless you're just for it. But it'd be very unfortunate if you are, because that would be very disturbing. But I definitely think the first step is having a talk with the employees, and then also just trying to reach out to your clientele, in our case, our patients, making a statement, and try to be as thorough and empathetic as possible. From a person of color's point of view, we know that everyone don't go through what we go through. We've been going through it forever. Like I have a nephew who's 5, and we already are planning to have a talk with him of what to do if he get pulled over. Don't do this, don't say that, when he turns like 10, because, for some reason, those racial slurs and things start happening now in elementary school for a lot of people. I had my first encounter when I was 12. And so it's almost like we kind of are so used to it and we're tired of it. But we also have to realize from our perspective and take accountability that we have to introduce this to different people and have conversations about it if we want anything to change.
I can't believe that's a conversation you have to have with a 5-year-old. I can't imagine how tired that must make you.
Yeah, it definitely does. My dad is one of those people who it's kind of sadder to kind of see how long it's been going on. I kind of got a little bit of perspective over the weekend when I talked to my grandmother, who was like, I marched for this back when Martin Luther King was alive. She was like, I was doing the same thing. I was protesting. We didn't riot, but she was like, I really thought I was setting your future up to look better than mine. Then my dad was like, I did the same thing when I was in my 30s. He was like, when this was happening to us and Rodney King happened, he was like, I got angry, I protested. And he was like, I thought I was making a better future for you. And now I'm thinking like, I'm thinking I'm making a better future for my nephew who's 5. And I realized like, we're not progressing like we want, but I think we just never had support that we needed to really make an impact. But I feel like in terms of corporate America, this is the most I've ever seen public statements from multi-million-dollar companies and corporations really kind of realizing like, wow, this is really happening, and kind of giving support that is needed. Because I think they always I think it's like more just out of sight, out of mind. And it's never been out of my sight or out of my mind because I didn't have a choice but to deal with it. But I think just having some form of support is way better than none. I think I reached out to Jake and I went to his Facebook page and I was like, thank you for even posting about it, because my timeline of my counterparts is just a normal day. And it's like, I just watched a man die for 9 minutes, and that's terrifying. Like, I have brothers, I have nephews, I have me, and I know I got pulled over for like a traffic ticket, and cops came to my door and asked for my driver's license with their gun already out. And I'm just like, I haven't done anything. And it's scarier because it's not something that a person of color can change. We can't do anything to get out of this for us because we can't, change our skin color. But I think having the conversation, taking some kind of action, having support and backings from corporations is a very good first step into having a more progressive future.
Yeah, Jake has been a North Star for me, particularly on this. I mean, one of the things that Jake is particularly good at is he has an empathetic heart, and empathy is one of our core values. And I mean, I can't tell you sort of the things that he's taught me, and just even like little phrases that I had to go look up because I'd never heard them before. And it's not that I'm not paying attention, but things like implicit bias. That's a word I hadn't heard before in the last 2 weeks, and then you go in your research and you go, okay, yeah, I get that. And I once again, I mean, just the idea that on your drive home, something, the things that are constantly having to run through your head, and the way that you're sort of having to hide parts of yourself or put things in a different box because of the context. Yeah, I can imagine how that would make life very difficult, and I I don't know how you do it, Shannon. I mean, I really don't. It's
something that I think my parents didn't really have a talk with me. I kind of got thrown in it. I think when everybody's born, we don't see color or race. It's kind of taught into us that this is just what it is, and like my dad didn't tell me you're gonna be treated differently because of this. It wasn't no talk. I just got called a racial slur on the side of the road one day in Bryan when I was trying to change my tire, and I was like, oh, this is life. And then it kind of was like, okay, it became real. Unfortunately for the generations below me, like my nieces and nephews, it has to be more intentional, because I feel like the injustices are becoming more intentional. I feel like it's triggered by political influence, and I feel like just racial tensions in general has risen, given the fact that our president and so forth is kind of a little bit more open with how he feels about us. And I think it makes it kind of gives permission for other people to be more open with it as well. Because I haven't seen, tons of videos where people are coming out the woodworks now, like, I hate you. Like, I had so many people, like even on my own social media, that have like came and attacked my post. And I'm like, my post is not even about nothing to do, with you. It's like something I'm personally going through. And they're just against it, and they just think it's like so bizarre. And so it kind of puts into perspective, like, wow, like, I mean, you're looking at it from a very good point of view of, I want to be different, and I want to educate myself, and I want to get a perspective of someone who's going through this. And there's a vast majority of people that's like, no, I want to stay exactly how I am, and this is how I've been really feeling the whole time. So I think that shock of it is the most difficult, because there's people I went to college with, my colleagues, there's people I went, workplaces with, and out the blue, this happens. And I realized the whole time they never, were a fan of, people of color. So it was kind of just interesting to kind of see true colors kind of come out and who people really are in their character during these times. It's kind of scary too, because you don't want to walk around with your guard up, but you also it's like another thing to now be nervous about.
Well, but I think that especially for people in senior leadership roles like us, one of the most important things we do is we build and we promote culture. I mean, that's the biggest part of our job, is creating a place where everybody feels like their best self, so that they can be the most productive person that they can be. I mean, we all have responsibilities to the business to try to drive the business forward, and that comes from taking good care of our people so that the best of them shows up for work each day. And I think that if you're not listening to them, if you're not allowing them to be whoever they are, whether they're Black or they're Latino or they're some part of another marginalized community, where they feel like they have to hide something or they can't bring some unique perspective to the table, you're missing big opportunities, and you're not going to get the best person on your team.
So I have a question, I guess, like for you and your company. When this all happened, how did you approach a conversation with your employees? Was it something that you had to really think about, or was it just hands down, you just took action? Or what is the process like on the other side of the table?
Sure. We have a morning huddle every morning at 8:30. It's how we start our day every day. And I spent all weekend 2 weeks ago watching the protests and listening to the commentators and reading everything that I could on Twitter, watching how the police and the machine and that sort of reacted to all of this. And it I mean, I'll be honest with you, just depressed the living shit out of me. There's no other way to put it. The murder of George Floyd, all the way up to the way that people that just want justice are treated, it depressed me. But at the same time, I'm not. I look in the mirror every day, and I know the way. I know that I have an incredible amount of privilege, and I know that because of just being born who I am, a cis white male over 6 feet tall, born in America, that I have advantages that most people would dream about. And I had parents that took good care of me and sent me to good schools and tried to do everything that they could. And I'm sure that your parents did too. But just because that they were straight, white, middle-class people, they probably had advantages that your parents didn't have. And so I woke up Monday morning and I said, I have to talk about this. I know I have to talk about this. I don't know how I'm going to talk about this, but I know that I have people on my team that have a perspective, or that have felt, if not something exactly like this, something very similar to this in their lives. Because I have people on my staff that are part of marginalized communities. And we're a minority-run business too. I had to ask questions. So I started Monday Huddle with, listen, guys, I know I've got to talk about this. I know that we need to say something. I don't want to be silent, but I also don't think I'm the right person to say something, because the perspective I can offer is a complete lack of understanding, not empathy. I totally understand why people are upset. That I can get. But the little stuff that you've talked about, it just makes us tired because we have to think about it all the time and we can't focus on the other stuff. That never even entered my mind until I started reading and listening to other people share similar stories to what you shared. Then you look back and you say, okay, the people, the Black people that I have known in my life and I've had good relationships with, was there were they afraid to bring all of themselves to our relationship? And did I miss out on something because of that? And did I do something to make them feel like they couldn't? Just not consciously, just unconsciously. And so we shot a vlog. I had everyone on the staff look at it. And they told me, you can publish this. But the truth is, I came back to, I'm not the right voice for this. And I'd rather sit and listen and have other people tell me what I should be doing with my position. And a lot of what I heard was, use it to amplify.
Yes.
Don't focus on you and your uncomfortableness. Let the Shannons of the world use your platform and your network and your privilege to amplify their voice. And so when Jake said, hey, I think Shannon would be great for this, I said, yes, let's do it. Because like I said, Jake has been a North Star for me on this. And so I was totally excited. But and so when we didn't publish the blog, Jake and a couple other people in our office worked on the message that we did post. And I wish that I could have said that it, was all my idea, but it wasn't. I paid attention to other leaders that are like me there's a great CEO, his name's Ryan Carson. He runs the online school Treehouse. He had a wonderful post to his employees. There's another designer that I've followed for a long time named Cameron Mall that has continually talked about the things that he's heard because he's paying attention and he's listening. And I just said, that's what we're going to say, because I want to hear what other people say. I can't offer a whole lot of new here. All I can do is listen and figure out who needs a voice. So.
And I like that a lot. I feel like that's something that is really refreshing, because even when you said you watched it over the weekend and it made you depressed and broke your heart, I think from my side of the table, we don't really hear that a lot or enough. And so we just think that the other side of the table don't care, because we don't know if it breaks your heart, and nobody ever talks about it. We just assume they see it and don't care. And then I had to, when I got in this position, I was like, I really have to change my way of thinking, because I know I'm not just thinking for myself. I think for the company. I think for, the owner doctors. I think of, so many different factors, but it makes you kind of like wonder who cares and who don't. So I think it's super important to have those conversations like in your huddle and just sit down to everybody, because you never know who people know, or they may have kids that are Black, or may just really be impacted. Like, I stand with you, because I think this entire movement and everything that's going on is revolved around the lack of support, the lack of change. And if we had more of that from corporations, like you said, you had a lot of companies that made statements, and this is the first time I've seen this much movement in terms of corporate America making statements to stand in solidarity against racial injustices. And it's so refreshing. It makes me happy. I know it makes other people happy, just to know like people care, people hear us, because I try to tell people all the time, this protest, rioting, is just a lack of being heard. It's like a kid that's been in a room, locked in a closet, screaming, and you're like, why are you screaming? They just want to be heard. They just want something to be done, because this is happening a lot. Like, this was filmed, but there's so many that are not filmed.
Oh, sure.
There's just so many that nobody gets to do a hashtag for, and those unnamed people and those mothers and all those people that are suffering, and it's like nobody sees us. Like, nobody cares about us. And then when you try to post to bring awareness, like, hey, we matter, it's always like the group of people that's like, but so does everybody else. So then you go back to feeling important to small again. It's like, hey, look over here, everything's bad is happening, can somebody help us? Like, you're drowning, and it's like, but everybody drowns 10 times a year. It's like all these kids are drowning. But it's like, I'm drowning right now, could someone help? And they're like, everyone drowns or could drown. And it's I think this is the first time that I've seen so much support from people who have more power than what we've been able to produce. Even in numbers, all we're going to do is probably go out there and get arrested or tased, or more people end up hurt. But from a corporate standpoint, you have the audience, you have, power, you have finances, you can actually move things and put things in fruition. It just takes the right people who are passionate, because the equal amount of people that are pro, this should stop, let's change the laws, let's get in here and really make some move. You also got people who are donating money to do the opposite, to keep us where we're at. And it's like, I feel like if you have 1,000 Black people lined up, protesting, we are way more powerful. We have 2,000 of other races behind us. It's like us too. And, it's not like a Me Too movement, but I think it's just pleading to be heard, to be supported. And I think a lot of companies in the past always took the silent approach of, I don't want to get into that, it's politics. And I think they forget the fact that for people like me, it's not politics, it's personal. Like this is my entire family. This is my livelihood. This is me leaving the office and I'm scared. This is, because even after it happened, I got texts about like the Ku Klux Klan in my neighborhood. I live in Shannon Hills. And I'm like, it's Shannon Hills, come on now. And they were like, be safe. My dad was like, do you need a gun? And I'm like, I don't want to have to live this life like I'm living it, but I can't, my one voice is not as strong. And I feel like a lot of people feel that way. Working in the workplace, just, I call it just living while Black. You just want someone to stand with you, because it's easier to fight an army when you have an army yourself. But when it's just a few of you guys, you kind of facing death, you're still going to stand there because you want to win. But it's way more powerful in numbers. But you just still, I think the people who don't get it, the ignorance overpowers the progressiveness. And so they kind of get stuck on the all life matter. They get stuck on the cop life matters, and they're just forgetting the fact that this has nothing to do with that. And that it's just, it's one group of people that needs help from the rest of the human race. And we are suffering, we're dying, we're being brutalized, and we just need to be heard and someone to come jump in to fight with us. And that's what I think people need to understand. I think the empathy part, like say, you probably can't empathize, but you can definitely sympathize. Like, I love the fact you said, like, hey, over the weekend, this tore me up. Even hearing that, it's like, it tore me up too. We can both be mad, sad together, or upset together and want to change together. And that brings unity. But if everyone's just like, I was sad over the weekend, and you're just like, I just watched the game. It's kind of like, but somebody killed us. Like, why don't nobody care? Because we, like I said, I saw it, and I'm like, people sit with their phones for 9 minutes and watch a murder live, and it's streamed live, and nobody is doing anything. And it's just sad, because I'm like, if they ain't do nothing about his, they're not gonna do nothing about mine. And they're not gonna do nothing about my nephew and my brothers and my dad. And it gets sadder and sadder the more it happens, and it never gets too comfortable where it doesn't impact us. But it's a little extra harder when you work in corporate America, because you gotta maintain professionalism. You can't be too vocal, you can't be too political, and you don't have much of a platform or outlet. You can't really go to your boss and be like, hey, I feel this kind of way, because you don't want to upset them, and you're scared that they may be for the knee on the neck, and now you finna get fired. So it's a very thin line of, who do I talk to? Where do I go? Who supports me? Where am I accepted? Do they really care about me? Or is it now they're on Facebook and out the blue it's like, oh, you never did. It's a lot of mistrust, and you're just trying to stay grounded and rooted, and just try to stay positive. This is what I try to do. But I think just having a conversation is the first step, and then reaching out and doing something public. At least to me, and what I tell my owner doctors is, if you make a public statement, it's like a beacon of light in the sky that lets every person know, like, hey, I accept you here. You don't have to worry about that here. If you say nothing, it's like, it's just darkness, and it doesn't translate as, oh, they're on both sides. It's like, no, they don't say nothing, so they don't see nothing, so I'm not safe here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just those things that I think most people probably don't think about that could really impact the company from a company standpoint.
Well, so here's my take on why we're seeing so much public support, and I'm not naive enough to, and I'm just cynical enough to know that some of it is disingenuous. There are some companies that are doing it as a ploy or to protect their customer base. I do really believe that some are, and a good number of them are totally genuine in their support. And here's what I think it is. And maybe if nothing else, it will add some to hope to what you said about your grandparents and your parents and feeling like it doesn't progress anywhere. I would tell you, people my age, and I don't know how old you are, but my guess is you're younger than I am. Is that we're now in those power positions where we can say, hey, this isn't right. This is not how I was raised. And I'm going to make a statement. Or I'm going to do the things that matter because it matters to me, even if I don't completely understand it. And I think it's the first sort of like I remember when Rodney King happened. I mean, I was old enough to understand what was going on. I was in high school. But the people that were in charge of the companies then were, from the era that hadn't learned they weren't old enough to sort of learn the lessons from the civil rights era and be able to say, this was, and so it didn't get that groundswell. And then I think that we're just at this perfect confluence of time, energy, and the right people in power to make a difference. That it will make a difference. I really do believe that, especially if more people like you will keep telling us what we can do to help move the needle forward. I mean, we're counting on you for that, and you've already got enough to do, Shannon. I know that. We're counting on you.
Well, and to that point, when you were talking about things that I posted on my personal page and stuff, a lot of it is things that I've learned that I forever considered myself a really good ally, but then this brought up so many more questions. And you're talking about terms you learn. I learned about microaggressions, and I learned about this institutionalized racism that we're just born into, especially in the South, and just kind of that it's taught to you, but not blatantly taught to you. And so I think that I share just to kind of hope that someone else sees that there's an opportunity to learn and be a better ally. I read a really great article that actually came out in '89, and I forgot the author, but it's called Unpacking White Privilege. And it's basically this concept that you have a bag full of it, and that acknowledging one does not acknowledge everything in the bag. And so I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that I found a new sense of responsibility to teach myself how to be a better ally, because I just coasted by and thought I was a good ally. And so now and also talking to you, Shannon, and hearing that it's even these things that I wouldn't have considered to be a big deal, like saying that it broke my heart or saying that video just tore me, it needs to be vocalized, because that's support. And I think that a lot of times I just wasn't showing support because it was, oh, well, of course it hurt my feelings, or of course it tore me up. But it's no, I need to be loud about this because a human life was taken for no freaking reason, and that was insane. So anyway, all of that to say, I think that this has been an opportunity for me to really learn and grow, and not that it's about me in any way, but for me to step back and not be about me, for me to follow and use any platform I have, although,
and you're right, Jake. That's funny that you mentioned that, because I really do think that white people think that we automatically assume that they empathize, and we don't. So if you don't say you're sad, we don't assume you're sad. we actually assume the opposite because we're so used to people not caring about this movement and the racial injustice and the systemic racism that it's like, it's rare that you hear like you and Patrick say like, that depressed me, because we feel that way all the time, but it's really rare for someone to openly say, that made me sad too. And it's like, it did? Like, oh my God, you said that out loud? Because most people would literally, I don't think it's on purpose, but they feel like they say nothing, then it's already understood. Like, yeah, I care. I didn't say it, but and I'm like, no, I have no clue if you care or not, because I'm pretty sure if we went around thinking everybody cared, then I think that's how we kind of get into some of these bad predicaments, because we have, I think, as a society, we have people that we trust, people that we don't. And I think for my race in particular, it's really hard to decipher the two. Because I tell people, you don't become racist because everybody's not in one group. You can't hate all cops because that cop did this. So it's really hard when people are quiet to point out, do you care about me? Do you? If everybody's just sitting there with their mouth shut. So when someone is vocal about like, hey, this made me sad, it's like, I can count on you. And I realized, like, when I do talk to my allies that, Abby's one of them. She's not here right now in here, but she's like, I will go and protest with you. Like, I'm in it. And I'm like, if I need more people that will stand up and be like, we are serious, because I think it's really easy when, it's televised, but once the hype dies down, everyone forgets again. And I think they forget that this is not a trend for people of color. This is everyday reality. Like, this one was filmed. Thank God it was filmed. We don't even know if the police will get justice. We're used to it not happening. So what I was raised on is if something happens to you by a cop that hates you for how you look, you most likely will die and nothing will happen. And so you have to kind of find a way to still live life, find value in your life, still find a reason to smile, still find a way to trust, still find a way to, when you're scared. I know a lot of people who, when they get into like car wrecks or somebody breaking their houses, they think twice about calling the police because they're scared when police get there, what's going to happen. It's so many thoughts that it's like a two-step process with everything. It's like working twice as hard just to live, that I think people don't think about. And then when the hype dies down, when the hashtag goes away, everyone goes back to normal, and it's like, it doesn't ever go back to normal for us. This is still, the fear is still there, the anger is still there, the passion is still there. We just now have to be quiet and go sit down, because it's like making too much noise. Like, even when the protest started, I didn't see so many peaceful ones that had turned violent because they just automatically, see a person of color and like, oh, they're gonna do this. I'm like, we're not doing nothing. We're just standing here. So I've been personally nervous to go down there, because I'm like, I could just be standing there and then watch the Miller News, the marketing director of AFD spraying the face by Mace. And it's just, it's a sad reality that I want to change. And I do believe, like what Patrick's saying, like our new generations that are coming and that are currently in office can make moves and are more powerful. So it does give me a lot of hope. And this year alone, I feel like I made more allies than I made enemies. I know when this happened previously, like Sandra Bland and Mike Brown, those incidents, I lost so many friends because they was like, well, he should have been running. Well, he should have did this. I'm just like, somebody got killed like that. I don't know why that doesn't register. It's like, I don't know. Nobody cared. That's how it felt. And I think when I empathize with people and tell people that every person that I talk to, especially like out in the community, like our patients, our demographics that I usually just talk to, about partners and so forth, even they are like, nobody care about us. We just all we have. And it's just kind of like, no, we got some friends. And I try to stay positive, and you try to stay in a good light, but it's definitely refreshing when you get on a page and I see you and I'm like, I work with him. And oh my God, like he's like, he cares about me. It's like a little glimmer of hope, because I know for a while, even working here, I think the doctors were a little hesitant about approaching the situation. And I know they told me, they just didn't know how to bring it up. And I have to kind of remain conscious of the fact that I'm open to talk about it. I'm super passionate about the topic. Anything I can do to change it any way possible, I'm for it. I will risk my life for it. I'll risk everything for it if it's going to initiate change for my future nieces and nephews, because I don't have no kids. But I know for a lot of people, it is uncomfortable, but the only way to change is to get outside your current state. And so it's going to take a level of being uncomfortable. So I definitely appreciate like you taking the chance on probably losing friends. Appreciate Patrick when he posts this, no matter how many people are going to be mad about it. But I think it's necessary for growth. And it definitely, you know, if I had to speak on behalf of everyone in the African American community, it is so refreshing for someone to say, I don't look like you, I don't go through what you go through, but I have your back through it. It's so refreshing to know if somebody pop in right now and hit me in the face, that you're gonna jump in too and hit them back. You know, it's just somebody has your back, because I think that feeling of nobody does has been kind of instilled in us. I know when I was a child, my parents were like, you gotta work twice as hard, you gotta be twice as smart, you gotta, you know, do this, talk this way. I know even when I went on interviews forever, I would have to change my voice a little bit because they'll see Shannon on the paper, and then I'll get the phone interview, then in person I'll just get denied. And I'm like, oh, you guys didn't know I was Black. Like, gotcha. And it just, you know, and I was like, man, you know, and I didn't work that job for racism. It was very open and blunt. I'm just like, you know, stay positive, keep smiling, so you kind of get adjusted to it. But I would love to one day live in a world or create a world where everyone can literally just be themselves and it be okay. And so I think it starts with, you know, companies like iProv, companies like AFD, Shannon's and Jake's and Patrick's of the world, just having those conversations, learning, and even us learning, like people cutting to learn too, that, you know, that other people are not talking about it because they don't care. It's just because they don't know enough to talk about the conversation. But I think just saying, you know, I care goes a long way. And I think even starting there is, you know, progress from our mentality.
Shannon, I don't think that Jake and I can do any better job of ending it, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time and your perspective today, and just letting us hear from you really meant a lot to me and to Jake. So thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
Really, thank you for coming, girl.
All right, well, Jake, thanks so much, and Shannon, thank you too. Just to honor Jordan. Peace, peeps.
Peace, peeps.
Peace.